For more than 7 centuries, there was a place in the mountains of Cimmeria that no king dared erase from the earth. Its walls crumbled, its towers fell, its gates rotted beneath snow and rain. Yet every generation rebuilt them, not to defend a border, not to guard a treasure, not to honor a forgotten king. The oldest surviving chronicles tell a far more unsettling story. That fortress existed for only one purpose: to conceal a wound in the world. The few stone tablets that escaped the fires of war speak of a bottomless pit older than the first tribes of Cimmeria, older than the kingdoms of Aquilonia and Stygia, perhaps older than the Hyborian Age itself. No man knew who carved it. No tool had ever touched its walls, and no map recorded what lay beneath its endless darkness. At first, the mountain claimed only curious hunters. Then shepherds vanished without a trace. Later, entire patrols disappeared after hearing voices rising from the depths where no living thing should have survived. The kings ordered the pit sealed. The priests forbade its name. The scribes struck it from every royal record. In time, the people forgot why the fortress had been built. They remembered only one command, passed from father to son like an ancient oath: never descend into the black pit. Most believed it was nothing more than another superstition born from fear. But the Forbidden's archives preserved a different truth. The fortress was never meant to keep men out. It was built to keep something else from finding its way back into the world above. This is not the story of the warrior who would one day survive the black pit. That tale belongs to another chronicle. This is the forgotten history of the men whose choices condemned generations to guard a darkness they could neither understand nor destroy, because no legend is born by chance, and every abyss has a beginning. The oldest records preserved in the hidden vaults of Cimmeria begin not with the black pit itself, but with a winter unlike any remembered before. Snow buried entire villages beneath frozen drifts, rivers vanished beneath sheets of ice, and the mountain passes that connected the northern clans became silent for months at a time. Hunters returned with empty hands. Shepherds abandoned their flocks. Even the wolves, creatures that feared almost nothing beneath the gray skies of Cimmeria, refused to climb a certain range of peaks. At first, the clan elders dismissed the stories as nothing more than fear carried by exhausted men. Every harsh winter gave birth to strange tales: voices in the wind, shadows moving across the snow, fires seen where no camp had ever stood. Such stories had always existed among mountain folk. But this time, the disappearances did not stop when spring arrived. A hunter vanished without leaving tracks. 3 scouts failed to return from a routine patrol. A messenger carrying royal seals was found days later beside an abandoned trail, his horse wandering alone through the forest. His body showed no wounds, no signs of struggle, and no mark of disease. Yet his face remained frozen in an expression of absolute terror, as though the last thing he had seen had stolen every thought from his mind. Whispers spread from village to village. The mountain had awakened. When these reports finally reached the hall of King Maelgor, ruler of the northern Cimmerian clans, many expected the old king to forbid travel into the region. Others urged him to burn the forests surrounding the mountain or abandon the ancient trade route altogether. Instead, Maelgor made a different choice. It would become one of the most disastrous decisions ever recorded in the forgotten history of Cimmeria. Unlike many rulers of his age, Maelgor did not believe in curses. He believed every mystery could be explained by the courage of men willing to face it. To him, fear was a greater enemy than any creature hidden beneath stone or forest. If men disappear, he is said to have declared before his council, then men will find the reason. Those words survived because a royal scribe carved them into a stone tablet recovered centuries later beneath the ruins of the fortress itself. Within days, the king assembled an expedition unlike any the clans had seen, not merely warriors. He summoned stonemasons from the western valleys, surveyors who could read the shape of mountains, blacksmiths capable of repairing broken tools far from civilization, priests whose duty was not to perform miracles, but to preserve ancient traditions older than the kingdom itself. And among them stood a man history almost forgot. His name was Erendir. He was neither a noble nor a celebrated warrior. He had never commanded an army. He carried no legendary sword. He was simply the finest master builder in all of Cimmeria. His task seemed straightforward. Reach the mountain. Discover what frightened the people. If necessary, build a permanent outpost to secure the region. The chronicles say Erendir accepted without hesitation, not because he sought glory, but because he believed stone could solve any problem created by men. He did not yet understand that the mountain held a problem no wall had ever been meant to contain. As the expedition climbed into the high passes, strange signs began to appear. Ancient standing stones rose from the snow, worn smooth by centuries beyond counting. None bore the markings of the Cimmerians. None matched the symbols of Stygia, Aquilonia, or any known kingdom of the Hyborian Age. They belonged to a civilization whose name had already been erased long before the first kings claimed these lands. And every stone faced the same direction, toward the summit, toward the place where the mountain concealed its oldest secret. The expedition reached the summit on the 12th day. By then, even the most experienced hunters had abandoned their confidence. The forest had grown unnaturally silent. No birds circled above the cliffs. No wolves prowled between the ancient pines. Even the wind, which never truly abandoned the mountains of Cimmeria, seemed unwilling to cross the final ridge. The oldest journals describe an oppressive stillness that no man could explain. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of a place waiting. When the company finally stepped beyond the ridge, they found no ruined city, no forgotten temple, no fortress left by some ancient king. Instead, they discovered a vast circle of broken stone surrounding an opening in the mountain itself. At first glance, it appeared to be an abandoned quarry, but Erendir knew immediately that something was wrong. No quarry in history had ever been perfectly round. No quarry had walls so smooth that even sunlight struggled to cling to them. And no quarry vanished into darkness so complete that torches thrown into it disappeared long before striking the bottom. The master builder approached the edge carefully. He dropped a heavy stone into the opening. The men listened. 1 heartbeat. 10. 20. A full minute passed. No sound ever returned. The silence that followed unsettled them more than any roar could have. One of the priests knelt beside the rim and whispered a prayer in an ancient tongue that none of the younger men recognized. When he finished, he covered the symbol hanging from his neck beneath his cloak. Later records would reveal why. Even then, he already feared that they had discovered something older than the gods worshipped by the Cimmerian clans. King Maelgor ordered the surveyors to measure the opening. Their ropes proved useless. The first vanished into darkness. The second returned with its end cleanly severed. Not frayed, not broken against sharp stone. Cut, as though a blade had passed through it far below the reach of human hands. The soldiers argued that the rope had scraped against hidden rocks. Erendir disagreed. He examined the fibers himself. Years spent shaping stone had taught him to recognize the marks left by tools. This cut had been impossibly clean. Whatever had separated the rope had done so with deliberate precision. Still, the king refused to abandon the investigation. Fear, he declared, had already stolen enough from his people. He ordered stronger ropes forged from braided leather. Iron hooks were driven into the surrounding rock. The expedition prepared to send its first man into the abyss. The volunteers stepped forward without hesitation. Among the Cimmerians, courage was not admired. It was expected. The first to descend was a young warrior named Haldric. He carried 2 torches, a hammer, and enough provisions for 3 days. Above him, 40 men held the rope. Foot by foot, he disappeared beneath the rim until only the faint glow of his torch remained. For several minutes, his voice echoed upward as he described smooth walls unlike any natural cave. Then the echoes stopped. The rope continued moving downward, slowly, steadily, as though Haldrick were descending exactly as planned. Then, without warning, the weight vanished. The men pulling the line nearly fell backward. They hauled the rope to the surface as quickly as they could. It returned empty. Its iron hook remained intact, its knots untouched. Only the leather itself had been sliced apart several yards below the rim. Again, with impossible precision. No blood stained the rope. No cry had risen from the darkness. Only silence. Several warriors demanded that the pit be abandoned immediately. Others insisted that some hidden tribe must be living beneath the mountain. King Maelgor rejected both explanations. A man did not simply disappear, he said. If another man cut that rope, then he can be found. But Erendir no longer believed they were searching for men. As dusk settled over the mountain, he walked alone around the circle of ancient stones surrounding the abyss. Most had collapsed long ago. Others leaned beneath centuries of frost. Yet one still stood upright, half buried beneath moss and snow. Unlike the others, it bore carvings that time had failed to erase. Not words, not names, warnings, a spiral descending into darkness, hands reaching upward from beneath it, and above them all, a fortress, not being built, but already standing, as if whoever carved that stone had known, long before King Maelgor was born, that one day men would raise walls over the abyss, not to claim it, but to hide it forever. The disappearance of Haldrick marked the end of reason. Until that moment, King Maelgor had believed the mountain concealed an enemy that could be defeated with stronger men, sharper steel, or greater courage. But no army could wage war against silence itself. For 3 days, the expedition remained beside the abyss. No one spoke above a whisper. The priests refused to perform the evening rites. Even the horses, tied far from the edge, pulled constantly against their reins, their eyes fixed upon the pit as though sensing a predator hidden beyond human sight. Then, on the 4th night, something happened that would never appear in the royal chronicles. Only the Forbidden's archives preserved the account. Just before dawn, one of the sentries claimed he heard footsteps climbing from below. Not echoing downward, climbing upward, slow, measured, deliberate. He woke the nearest guards, expecting to find one of the missing men somehow returning from the darkness. Instead, they found nothing. No figure emerged. No torchlight flickered beneath the rim. Only the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps continued for several moments, before stopping abruptly. The soldiers rushed to the edge with their spears raised. The pit remained empty. Its darkness was as complete as it had always been. Yet something had changed. Fresh scratches marked the inner wall, only a few feet beneath the rim, long, parallel, as though enormous hands had searched blindly for stone strong enough to hold. No man admitted sleeping after that. When morning came, Erendir ordered every worker to inspect the ancient circles surrounding the abyss. The fallen stones were moved one by one. Beneath them, they discovered fragments of carved tablets buried beneath centuries of soil and frozen earth. Most had shattered beyond recognition, but a handful remained intact. The inscriptions were unlike any language known in the Hyborian kingdoms. Even the eldest priest confessed he had never seen such symbols. Yet the carvings told a story without the need for words. The first tablet showed men descending willingly into the abyss. The second showed fewer returning. The third depicted figures dragging massive blocks of stone toward the opening. The fourth revealed walls rising around the pit, tower after tower, gate after gate, not as a fortress against invaders, but as a prison built around the mountain itself. The final fragment disturbed Erendir more than all the others. It showed no battle, no monster, No victorious king. Only a single man placing the last stone into a great wall, while the people behind him walked away without looking back. The meaning was unmistakable. Whoever had built the first fortress had not celebrated its completion. They had abandoned it, not because they had failed, but because sealing the abyss had been their only victory. That discovery divided the expedition. The priests declared the mountain cursed and demanded they leave before sunset. Several warriors agreed. They argued that no treasure, no road, and no kingdom was worth risking what lay beneath the earth. But King Maelgor stood in silence for a long time, studying the broken tablets scattered across the frozen ground. When he finally spoke, his decision would shape the fate of Cimmeria for centuries. If another people built these walls, he said, then they lacked the strength to finish what they began. No one answered. The king looked toward Erendir. You are the finest builder our people have ever known. He pointed toward the abyss. You will build a fortress greater than theirs. Erendir felt no pride in those words, only dread. For the first time since leaving the capital, he understood that the mountain had never been waiting for explorers. It had been waiting for builders, because every generation believed could improve upon the work of those who came before, and every generation made the same mistake. That evening, as the foundations of the new fortress were marked upon the frozen earth, Erendir noticed something no one else seemed willing to acknowledge. The ancient stones surrounding the pit had not been arranged to keep travelers away. They had been arranged in concentric circles, like barriers, like seals. Each generation had added another layer of stone over the last, not to strengthen the mountain, but to reinforce whatever promise had first been made in an age so distant that even its name had been forgotten. The fortress they were about to build was not the first. It was merely the newest layer in a prison that had existed long before the first Cimmerian king claimed those mountains as his own. Construction began before the first snowfall. King Maelgor believed that stone could accomplish what fear never would. If the abyss could not be understood, then it would be buried beneath walls, so immense that future generations would never question what lay beneath them. Erendir obeyed his king, but each stone he placed felt less like the foundation of a fortress, and more like another verse in a prayer no man truly understood. Thousands of blocks were cut from the surrounding cliffs. The work lasted through rain, frost, and bitter winds that stripped the flesh from unprotected hands. Entire camps were built around the mountain. Blacksmiths forged iron day and night. Carpenters raised scaffolds that clung to the cliffs like spider webs. Supply caravans climbed the narrow passes every week, carrying food, timber, and tools from villages many days away. It became the largest construction project Cimmeria had ever witnessed, yet no songs were written about it. No celebrations marked its progress. Even the workers lowered their voices whenever they approached the center of the fortress. The pit remained open, always watching, as the walls slowly rose around it. Then the accidents began. At first they appeared ordinary. A mason slipped from a scaffold. A crane collapsed without warning. A team of oxen refused to pull stone toward the inner courtyard, no matter how fiercely their handlers beat them. But Erendir noticed something no one else did. Every accident happened closer to the abyss than the one before, as though the mountain itself rejected every stone laid upon it. One morning, the builders arrived to discover that nearly 20 blocks placed the previous day had shifted during the night. Not fallen, moved. Each weighed more than 20 men could lift. Yet they had been arranged into a perfect circle facing the pit. No footprints surrounded them. No drag marks scarred the frozen ground. The king accused frightened workers of sabotage. 3 men were publicly whipped before the entire camp. None confessed, because none had touched the stones. Days later, another crew vanished. They had been assigned to reinforce the deepest foundation beneath the western tower. Their tools remained exactly where they had left them. Their lanterns were still burning, The fresh mortar had not yet dried, but the men themselves had disappeared. No tunnel had collapsed. No hidden passage had been found. It was as if the mountain had simply decided to reclaim them. By then, even the priests no longer spoke of curses. They spoke of warnings. The oldest among them, a man named Targos, requested a private audience with Erendur. That night, beneath a sky hidden by snow clouds, the old priest carried something wrapped in worn leather. It was not a holy relic, nor a sacred weapon. It was a fragment of black stone, unlike anything found in the surrounding mountains. Its surface was polished smooth, despite its unimaginable age. Upon it were carved symbols almost identical to those they had discovered near the abyss. Targos confessed that his order had guarded the fragment for generations, not because they understood it, but because they feared what would happen if it were forgotten. Our fathers believed this mountain was sealed long before Cimmeria existed, the priest whispered. They believed another people stood where we stand now. Erendur turned the stone in his hands. One symbol caught his attention. It was the same spiral descending into darkness that appeared upon the ancient tablets. But this time, another mark stood beside it. A single human hand, placing one final stone above the spiral. The fortress, Erendur murmured. Targos slowly shook his head. No, the seal. Those words lingered in Erendur's thoughts long after the priest had gone. Until that night, he had believed he was constructing a fortress to protect the kingdom. Now he understood the terrible truth. The walls, the towers, the gates, even the foundations themselves. They were never meant to defend Cimmeria from an invading army. They were part of something far older, a ritual repeated by countless generations. Every civilization that discovered the abyss reached the same conclusion. Not that it should be explored, not that it should be conquered, only that it had to be buried again. Before winter tightened its grip upon the mountains, Erendur made one final change to the king's design. Without Maelgor's knowledge, he ordered the central foundations widened until they rested directly above the rim of the Black Pit. No hall would stand there. No throne room. No armory. Only an enormous weight of stone pressing downward, as though the fortress itself had become the final stone in an ancient seal first begun by people whose names had vanished from history. Erendur prayed it would be enough. The mountain gave him no answer, only silence. The same terrible silence that had greeted the first men who dared to look into the darkness below. The fortress was completed in the 9th year. Its walls stood higher than any built before by the northern clans. Massive towers overlooked every mountain pass. Iron gates sealed the only road leading to its summit, and beneath its central courtyard rested the oldest secret in Cimmeria. To those who arrived after its construction, it appeared to be nothing more than another stronghold protecting the frontier. That was exactly what King Maelgor wanted the world to believe. The official chronicles recorded a victory. They spoke of dangerous passes secured against raiders. They praised the king's vision. They celebrated the endurance of Cimmerian builders who had conquered an unforgiving mountain. Not a single line mentioned the abyss. Not one sentence acknowledged the hundreds who had vanished during its construction. History had already begun to forget. But the Forbidden's archives preserved another account. On the morning the fortress was declared complete, Erendur requested one final audience with the king. The master builder no longer resembled the man who had first climbed the mountain. His beard had turned gray long before its time. His hands trembled constantly. The confidence that once defined him had disappeared beneath years of silent dread. He carried no maps, no measurements. Only a small leather satchel filled with fragments of the ancient tablets recovered around the pit. When the king welcomed him into the great hall, Erendur laid the broken stones upon the table. "We have finished the walls," he said quietly, "but the work will never truly be finished." King Maelgor frowned. "The mountain is sealed." Erendur slowly shook his head. "No, my king, we have only inherited the burden. Silence filled the chamber. The old builder pointed toward the fragments. For generations beyond counting, other kingdoms stood where we now stand. They discovered the abyss. They built walls. They buried the truth. And then they disappeared. The king remained unconvinced. "You speak as though the fortress were a prison," Erinder answered without hesitation. "It is, but not for what lies below." The king looked at him in confusion. The builder lowered his voice until it was almost a whisper. "It is a prison for memory. If the reason survives, someone will always believe he can finish what others began." Those words would become the final lesson Erinder ever recorded. According to the oldest surviving tablets, the king finally understood. Not because he had seen whatever lived beneath the mountain, but because he recognized the pattern. Every civilization believed itself wiser than the last. Every ruler believed old warnings were born from ignorance. Every generation chose to descend one more time, and every generation paid the same price. Before leaving the fortress forever, King Maelgor issued his final decree concerning the mountain. No expedition would ever again be permitted beneath the central courtyard. No map would describe what rested below. No royal chronicle would preserve the true purpose of the fortress. The priests were ordered to erase every official account. The scribes carved new histories upon fresh stone. The old tablets were broken, hidden, and scattered among forgotten vaults throughout the kingdom. The fortress would remain. Its purpose would not. Within 3 generations, even the descendants of the builders believed the stronghold had always guarded the northern frontier. The oath survived. The reason did not. Centuries passed. Kings came and went. Dynasties rose and fell. Snow buried the roads. Forests reclaimed abandoned watchtowers. The once mighty fortress slowly surrendered to time until only broken walls remained standing against the endless gray sky of Cimmeria. Travelers avoided the ruins without knowing why. Hunters refused to camp there. Children frightened one another with stories of voices rising beneath shattered stones. None of them knew those tales were echoes of a truth, deliberately buried by their own ancestors. The Black Pit had vanished from memory, exactly as Erinder intended. The oldest archive ends with a single line, carved by an unknown hand centuries after the fortress had already become a ruin. It does not speak of monsters. It does not describe battles. It offers only a warning. The seal was never meant to last forever. It was only meant to last until the next man believed himself stronger than fear. Who that man would be, the Lost Chronicles do not say. They record only that, many generations later, a young Cimmerian was thrown into the darkness beneath those forgotten ruins. Every witness believed the mountain had claimed another life. But for the first time since the fortress had been built, someone climbed back out. If you wish to uncover the forgotten histories buried beneath the ruins of the Hyborian Age, the king's history erased, the artifacts no chronicle dared describe, and the choices that gave birth to the world's greatest legends, then join us. Subscribe to the Lost Chronicles of Hyboria.